You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we've got a special show for you today. We are going to do a mailbag episode. It's been a little while. I think we have to go all the way back to the IPL for our last mailbag show. We like doing them. And we've got a bunch of questions before the World Cup. So we thought, why not? Let's get something out there because we couldn't think of any other good ideas. We have one piece of news, and we'll get to that shortly. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-brown. How are you doing, Max Rowe-brown? Still on the building site, I see.
Hello. Yes, still on the building site. Well, the plastering's done, but they don't have to paint the plaster. So, for now, for the foreseeable, this dismantled wardrobe and several boxes will be behind me. And well, lucky you.
What do you mean you have to paint the plaster? I guess it would be white otherwise, wouldn't it? Maybe you just want it white.
Well, no, natural plaster isn't white. You have to paint it white. Plaster's like a terracotta kind of colour. I mean, you could go for a rustic plain plaster look. That could be very 2023. Who knows?
Yeah. That's kind of... I like that. I think that maybe that will be the future. As the effects of the climate catastrophe bite, maybe we won't be able to produce paint anymore. And so
lots of plastic in paint, so,
Yeah, raw plaster to demonstrate your
your environmental credentials. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, virtue signaling. Max, we've got a bunch of questions. We're going to start with the ones from our Patreons, and then we have quite a few from Twitter. Before we do that, though, there was some news that broke, and you've just told me that the news that broke has unbroken, if that makes any sense. That Alastair Cook might be retiring from cricket at the end of the year. Do you want to fill the listeners in on where we stand with that? Because the original plan was to begin with a eulogy, a living eulogy to Alastair Cook, but perhaps we don't have to do that.
No, well, it all depends on your favoured source of news, Jack. If you are a big fan of the fantastic publication that is completely unbiased, presents facts as they are, totally not racist or bigoted or associated with any sort of negativity in terms of its press credentials, and you're a fan of the Daily Mail, then you may have read an article that said Alastair Cook was going to retire at the end of the season, and perhaps an Essex County Championship win looking possibly more likely since Surrey decided to completely fold yesterday might be a lovely way for them to sign off, that he wants to go back to the farm, leave without furore, and slink away off into the sunset of his media career. Or, alternatively, if you read ESPN Cricket Info, Matt Roller's just written an article saying that actually Essex are playing down all of that talk, and they're going to discuss the contract with him at the end of the season. He signed a 2-year contract 2 years ago to end in 2024, and we will see whether that brings anything. I guess to read from that is Cook's obviously told someone that he's thinking of retiring, and they've gone to the Mail, and Essex don't want him to retire because he's still quite good at cricket.
He's the top run scorer in the top division of the county championship this year. Oh, the top opening batter run scorer.
Yeah,
which isn't much more of a qualifier. It's still quite impressive. 5 years on from his England bow. It's a pretty nuts career that he's had, even post England. To be honest, he scored quite a lot of runs for Essex in that time. Would you be sad to see him go? I mean, I guess you would be, or wouldn't you?
Yeah,
as a Surrey fan.
It's always sad when a legend retires, isn't it? But he's been around for ages, scored piles and piles of runs, and it's sort of the kind of thing that's been on the cards, isn't it? He's 38 now. He retired from England a little while ago. He's doing more and more of the press stuff on TMS with the BBC, and looks like he enjoys that quite a lot. He's quite good at it, which is always nice. But yeah, I mean, he's obviously still performing. He's got a lot to give Essex. So if you're an Essex fan, and I guess a county championship fan and want to see the best players playing, if he's still producing at the top of the order, then as a cricket fan and supporter, then you'd want to see him carry on. But from his point of view, he's done enough. He's won county championships. He's won the Ashes twice as a captain with England. He's scored more runs than anyone else for England in Test matches. It's a pretty storied career, and he's got every right to just be like, you know what, that'll do. And you want to end on a high, don't you? You don't want to end on a point where you're like, oh, actually, my eyes have got a bit old and I can't see the ball anymore. And now all these 20-year-olds are bowling too fast, and I've averaged 20 in my last season. I'm sad. You don't want to do that, do you? You want to go out on a on a good note. So maybe
I
that's
don't
what
know.
we're
I
thinking.
always wonder with this. Everyone always says that it's better to go out on a high, and not many people get to choose when they leave. But like, does that if you do go out on a high, does that not linger with you as well? And maybe you left something on the table. I mean, I think in this particular case, there's probably not much that's been left on the table. Like he's accomplished everything that there is really to accomplish in the Red Bull game, which was his bag. But for other people, I think you want to go out at the bottom when it's
when it's clear that you've got nothing more to do.
Clear that that was it. Like you gave everything that you possibly could, and that it kind of is over. I think that's the way that you.
Yeah,
you really
I guess it depends on who you
Outstay,
are. When
you're welcome.
When
you're
you're
the last
Cook,
person at the party.
When you're Alastair Cook and you've done all there is to do, I don't think you need to worry too much about that, like you say. And going out on a high is a nice way to end it. Maybe if you think there's something that you haven't achieved yet, that's maybe when you're going to hang on and be like, okay, fine, I'll leave now because it's clearly not happening. But at least I gave myself the opportunity. I can't think of anything. Maybe Alastair would like to come on the show and tell us if there's anything that he thinks he's missed out on in his career. But I can't think of anything that he's going to look back and be like, oh, I could have achieved that if I just played into my 43rd year. I could have overtaken Darren Stevens and played for longer than him. Maybe that's the one thing he's going to miss out on. I think he'll be all right.
I mean, I had a look at his numbers. I think he's got 87 professional centuries. So there's 100.
So there's 100.
Tons.
Yeah,
but that's a long time away. Even if he has good years, say 4 tons a year. Even 5 tons a year, that's 3 more. So he'd be in his early 40s.
It's going to be mid-40s.
It's highly unlikely. At a more reasonable pace of say 2 or 3 tons a year, it's even longer. And that's professional tons. If you want to look at first class centuries, he has 74 of those, so 26 away from 100 hundreds in first class cricket, which is the Ram Prakash get to that, and Graham Hick, pretty substantial numbers. At least from the English game's point of view. And I think that's probably off the table, whatever happens. So,
350
last
matches is up in first class cricket. There's 400, maybe. That could be a milestone. Yeah, there's not a lot, is there?
Yeah. Last question. England's greatest ever batter, do you think, in test matches?
Ooh, I think he's the greatest exponent of 2 shots that anyone's ever seen. Like, he's got more runs per shot played probably than any other batter. I think it's always obviously he's got the most runs. I mean, averaging 45. I don't think he can be there just because he's too gritty. He was England's best ever opener. I could go with England's best ever batter. I mean, it's Joe Root, isn't it?
Well, I mean, Joe Root hasn't quite overtaken him yet, but there's certainly a case to be made that it is Root.
I mean, maybe that's the last thing Alastair Cook needs. He needs to perfect the reverse paddle scoop for 6.
Oh.
And then he can be England's greatest ever batter.
I wonder if he ever has. Done the reverse scoop. Anyway, Max, let's move on to some questions. We said that we advertised this as a Q&A show. We're going to start with Patreon. If you like the Cricket Podcast, you can sign up as a Patreon and chat with us on Discord, get preferential questions, and there's a few other bonuses as well. So patreon.com/the Cricket Pod for you. We're going to start with Alex. And most of these are World Cup related. We did ask people for World Cup related questions, so strap in. Alex says, how much of the recent ODI matches and injuries changed your thoughts on how teams will do in the World Cup, in brackets, if at all? Max, what are your thoughts? So we've had Southey injury, Travis Head an injury, Naseem Shah out injured, Harris Ralph's flank. I don't know if we've got an update on that, but there's something to consider. Akshar Patel hamstring, probably will be fit for the World Cup. There's a few injuries knocking around. What do you think? Who's been hurt?
I think the big one for me is South Africa. Nortje being out and Gala's out as well, isn't he? Probably less of an issue. But missing Aaron Nortje is absolutely huge for for South Africa. I mean, the raw pace that just, you've seen him pretty much terrify elite batsmen just with how fast he bowls, and you need that bit of extra, in the subcontinent sometimes, and especially with the white ball. So that's going to be a big loss for them. And I think, the bowling is one of the strengths that South Africa probably have in that squad. If you can knit together Nortje, Rabada, Ngidi, or throw in Maharaj and Shamsi in there, and Marco Jansen with the new ball, that's a pretty good quintet of bowlers. But once you take Nortje out of there, it loses a bit of potency, and I think that's going to affect them. And it's similar with Pakistan. Naseem Shah, I think basically the big paces being out is a big blow, and I think that's definitely knocked them down a peg or two. I mean, I don't think they're ever going to challenge top honours anyway. Obviously, I mentioned that South Africa might be a dark horse the other day. I think maybe revise that without Nortje, and Pakistan, I don't think we necessarily thought would challenge, but not having Naseem Shah definitely impacts their chances of pulling up any trees, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think both teams have still got a decent chance, to be honest. But I agree that losses to pace bowlers, especially like frontline world-class pace bowlers, is a big problem. I think Nortje missed the last World Cup as well. So on a personal level, that's quite sad for him. Naseem Shah, just wanted to check his numbers. 14 ODIs. This is limited sample size. Averages less than 17 with the ball. So you talk about a blow. That is one. I would say based on that. I mean, it's like will that transfer into a World Cup when everyone's got their first class or their first string batting lineups? I don't know, but it's a good start to a career, isn't it? And he was a first 11 player, and he'll now have to be replaced by somebody who wasn't. So obviously a downgrade there. I kind of agree. VJ from our Patreon again says, do you think this current World Cup format is better for weaker? In other formats where they play 2 games or 3 games, you might have a chance to kick a team out if you're lucky on any given day, but that doesn't give you as much big experience on the big stage. Do you think it's a better format for Afghanistan and the Netherlands specifically?
I can never keep up with the formats, Jack. What is it this year?
So it's the same as the last one. So it's 10 teams. Everyone plays each other once, so you get 9 matches. I think it's pretty good in terms of exposure. I think it could be quite chastening for both of those teams. I think particularly the Netherlands, as it was for Afghanistan.
That's their reward. That's their reward for making it. They get to mix with the big
9
boys.
times.
But that's what you want. Is that you're not going to get better unless you play the bigger team. So I think from that point of view, it is positive. Better than playing in a group of 4 and not getting a shout, isn't it?
Well, yeah, look, I think that's fair. I think that there is a format for 14 or 16 teams that we could, or 15 teams maybe, that we could land upon that would make more sense and would be better for like those mid-tier nations. If we say the top tier nations are the best 6 or 7, and then you've got another 6 or 7 mid-tier nations through from, let's say, Afghanistan down to, let's say, Scotland. Like good teams, they're actually capable of beating anyone, but they won't do it very often. I would like to see more of them at the World Cup, because I think then you actually end up with a proper World Cup, and you get more exposure for them and develop the game in general. Yeah,
no, I quite liked in the T20 World Cup the sort of preliminary round.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I don't know I don't think that would be plausible for a one-day World Cup. I don't think anybody's going to sit through 2 weeks of Oman, Scotland in 50 over World Cup. Let's be honest. But I do agree with you. I think the point I make about the little guys getting a go at the bigger guys, and that being their reward, and that being how they get better. Probably they're better off playing, Scotland versus Afghanistan more regularly. You at least want a stepping stone before you're playing Australia, England, India regularly. So I would agree with you there.
Look, I would just have everyone mixing though. I think let's say I think my ideal World Cup would be 14 teams, 2 groups of 7, 2 games a day, so that you pack the games in, maybe with the odd rest day because it could be a little bit intense that way. I think you keep the length of the tournament relatively short. I think you give everybody a decent chance from a TV perspective. If you time the games right, you can have middle overs and power plays and middle overs and death overs aligning so that there's always some good cricket to watch rather than the sort of 20 overs of nothing.
There's a real fetish, isn't there, in cricket for having 1 game a day?
I know, it's
in
mad.
World Cups.
It's really mad. I don't know. I don't really get that. Anyway, look, Max, let's move on. We've got one more question from Patreon, then we'll take a quick break and we will come back with all the Twitter questions. This one is from Rickon. He says, my question, a player that is going to the World Cup that doesn't deserve to go or got lucky, in your opinion? Now, that is a pretty challenging one, Max, because you've got to think on your feet there and come up with somebody. I actually think, I mean, it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think with the squads at 15 per nation, I think most teams have selected their 15 best players. Or maybe not their 15 best players, but I think if you're only taking 15 people to a World Cup, the 4 reserves probably deserve to go. If you had an 18-man squad, those 4 reserves would still be going, even if they might get less game time because you could pick a better player, a specialist, rather than a kind of fill-in-y type player. But I think most of the squads I've seen haven't got anyone where I'm like, hey, what? Why is that person there? It's not. Do you remember the last World Cup when Sri Lanka fired their captain and then brought a new captain in, like on the day before the tournament, and you were like, what is happening there? And Afghanistan were doing some crazy things as well. I haven't seen a complete selection.
Afghanistan, they just didn't. The government basically was just decided, didn't they, who was going to play instead?
More or less, yeah. Or somebody in the Afghan cricket, administration decided that. I don't know, Max. Is there anyone where you're like, what's this guy doing here?
Yeah, man, Ashton Agar.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, I'm not a buyer of Ashton. I just think he's like filler. He's a bit like Shardul Thacker. He's sort of in there because he can bat a bit, but I don't rate him that highly as a bowler. I think I'm sure Australia must have something a bit more exciting, a bit more vavavoom in there. That would be my take. Just because I want to say someone. I don't want to cop out. The other thing to say would just be someone who's coming to replace someone who's injured. But that's I guess a bit easy. Like whoever's replacing Naseem Shah, they're lucky.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely an element of that as well. Like if you were the luckiest man or the lucky one there, but even then, a lot of those players are quite good. And if you had a proper sized squad, would be there anyway. I guess Gerald Kirksey is going to be the guy who takes Norkia's place, for example.
Yeah, but he's quite exciting.
And that's but that's a no-brainer. Like, he wouldn't have been at the World Cup if they only had 15-man squads, because you'd have been like, well, how are we going to fit all these guys in? Well, he may have been, but there'll be somebody in that pot that didn't make it. Anyway, we're going to wrap up part 1 now. I'm just going to give a shout out to our sponsor, Manscaped. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off at manscaped.com plus free shipping. So that's 20% off plus free shipping. Get yourself involved with the Performance Fat package, or my personal favorite, the Beard Hedger. I am nicely tidied up this Friday before my weekend, thanks to our friends at Manscaped. And you can be too. So head over there, use the code CricketPod for 20% off plus free shipping. We're going to be 2 minutes, and then we will come back with questions from Twitter.